Hello, good morning. My name is Hilali Fahrian. Today I would like to present my journal presentation that have a title Factor Driving Consumer Willingness to Share Personal Data on Social Media Platform. I'm from Bandung Institute Technology. So this is the table of content of my presentation, including the introduction of the journal until the conclusion and recommendation. Moving on to the first chapter. So before discussing about the research background, we need to know about the definition of personal data. So, personal data is any information that relates to an identified or identifiable living individual. And the research background is the first personal data right now become as a commodity for a business, which means that business use consumer personal data to make marketing strategy and increase their sales. Therefore, personal data loss is rising, and social media platform become the platform that collect the vast amount of personal data. This is the data breach statistic tables. From this table, we can conclude that from 2017 until 2020, there is an increase of 91% of data breach accidents. So that is a high number. And next, this is the table that shows that social media collect the highest amount of user personal data. From this table, we can know that there is a ratio of incident toward total data leak, that there is 1 compared to 13.7 million. That means if there is an incident of personal data breach in social media, there is 13.7 million data that can be leaked. So that's all a high number. That's why this research is important to be done. And next, moving on to the problem statement. First, there is a privacy paradox. Privacy paradox is a state where a consumer is having a privacy concern, but they still carelessly share their data. And from the prior research say that consumer nowadays only value their privacy by €7. So it's really low. And then it have a big impact on the company itself when there is a personal data breach happen. Because when there is a personal data breach happen, the customer or consumer will blame the company and it will become reputational damage for the company. And to solve this issue, the author or me will use privacy calculus theory to solve this issue. Next, this is the research question. First research question is what are the significant factors that drive consumer willingness to share their personal data privacy in social media platform? And the second is how can social media platform react to this willingness without compromising the reputation of the platform? And the research objective is basically to answer those two research questions. And then moving on next to the scope and limitation. The first is social media user that we already researched, and the social media user that become a respondent in this research is an active social media user that use the social media at the daily basis that domiciled at city, Jakarta, Surabaya, Semarang, Bandung, and Yogyakarta. And then moving on to the second chapter, which is literature review. So this is the variable used in this research. On the independent variable is from privacy calculus theories and connected to the consumer willingness to share privacy. And then this is the hypothesis development. Each of the variable before is becoming the hypothesis that also directly connected to the consumer willingness to share privacy. And this is the shape of the conceptual framework. All those independent variable becoming hypothesis and directly connected to the dependent variable, which is consumer willingness to share privacy. And next, moving on to the third chapter, methodology. So the research approach itself will be a quantitative research with a method using survey and tools questionnaire. The sampling technique will be judgmental or purposive sampling. The population and sample will be an active social media user with a minimum respondent at 200, and the data analysis will be done by smart PLS or descriptive analysis. And these are the tables of the questionnaire list. The first is the demographic questions shown in the presentation, and the second is the behavioral question to choose the respondent, to eliminate the respondent that don't match the behavior. And then the specific question regarding to each variables. The first is perceived benefit, the second is perceived risk, the third is perceived privacy control, the fourth is bounded rationality, the fifth is emotion, the sixth is perceived fairness, And last but not least is the questionnaire for the dependent variable, which are consumer willingness to share personal data. And then moving on to the calculation part, the data analysis. So shown in the presentation is the socio-demographic profile of the respondent, which consists of gender, age, occupation, and domicile. All those data can be seen in the presentation. And next is behavioral respondent profile, which consists of social media user or not, and then amount of social media use, the usage frequency of that social media, the privacy sharing, which they share the privacy or not, the respondent, and then the last is the type of data share, which is important or not, and the data from the questionnaire or the survey is shown in the presentation. Next is the descriptive analysis. From the descriptive analysis, the author can derive the data from the grand mean, and there is two conclusion, which is the highest and lowest grand mean. The highest grand mean in the amount of 4.245, which owned by the perceived privacy control variables, and the lowest grand mean, which is 2.09, is owned by emotion variable. And also there is a pattern can be found when the author done the descriptive analysis. First is high value of independent variable, means there is also high value of the dependent variable indicator regarding to that independent variables, and low value of independent variable also the having low value of dependent variable indicator regarding to that independent variables. And then moving on to the PLS-SEM analysis. So the author already done the indicator reliability test, internal consistency test, convergent validity test, and discriminant validity test. And from all those reliability and validity tests, the result is good or reliable and valid. And for the hypothesis testing, there is 4 out of 6 hypotheses that are accepted. The first accepted hypothesis is perceived risk have a significant to the customer willingness to share personal privacy at social media platform. And the second is perceived privacy control toward willingness to share personal data at social media platform. And the third is bounded rationality have a significant toward consumer willingness to share personal data at social media platform. And the last is perceived fairness has a significant toward consumer willingness to share their personal data on the social media platform. And last, moving on to the conclusion. So from the data analysis and the calculation, we can derive or answer the research question 1, which is what are the factors that drive consumer to share the personal data. First is perceived risk. The second is perceived privacy control. The third is bounded rationality. And the last is perceived fairness. And for the research question 2 can be answered by using the data or finding that already answered in the research question 1, which are the company should lower the risk when consumer willing to share the data. And the second is company should give more control of user personal data when users share their data at their platform. And the third is company should educate their customer to know more about the value of their privacy. And the last is company should give fair feedback to their consumer when they're willing to share the data, like giving a better services, better apps, and etc. So that's all the presentation. There is a quote from the Brasnayer that said, "Data is the pollution problem of the information age, and protecting privacy is the environmental challenge." So we are, as academics, have an obligation to solve this issue. Thanks for the time. And if there are any questions, you can ask. Thank you. Goodbye and see you next time. Have a nice day.